Salam, hello and good morning. My name is Jawad Ahmed Fareed and I will be your host today for our discussion on pricing. Quick summary of the agenda on the menu today. Pricing is multidimensional. Think of it as a board game. Every piece, every pawn, every rook, every bishop, every knight has a role to play. Play around those pieces to play the game you want to play. Pricing is multi-stage. Every move on the board allows you to get to a final destination that you focused on. Pricing is also connected like a good novel or a film or a stage play or theater. Anything that you do has a butterfly effect on things that follow later on. For the purpose of our discussion, there are only three models that we focused on. The first is cost plus. This is a break-even model. Our objective is to recover all of our costs and make a little bit of profit. Model number one. Model number two focuses on value. Perceived value for the customer. Here the focus is not on what it costs us, but how the customer perceives the product and what is it worth to him or her. Model number three is the competitive model, where neither we nor the customer determines what the product is worth. Rather, that is determined by the market. The primary goal of the pricing game is to answer a simple question. Who do we want to be? Do we want to be price setters, people who determine what a product is worth and how and where and when and for how much is it sold in the market? If you have a great product, phenomenal demand, you can set the price you want to charge and your customers will take it. A price taker, on the other hand, takes the price the market has set. Here we no longer have a choice of how, where, or how much the product is sold. We simply sell the product at the price the market is willing to pay. A price setter. You determine what your product is worth and how much it's sold for. B, a price taker. The market determines what your product is worth and how much it's sold for. Who do you want to be? That, in essence, is the pricing game. Today's lecture has four parts. The first part focuses on context, the second on framework, third on cases, and the fourth on a number of applications that I think would be of interest to you. Let's start with context. Pricing is dimensional. What does that mean? Think of pricing as a board game. On that board game, we play moves and we play those moves with pieces on the board. Pieces in the pricing puzzle or the pricing game are dimensions. Three dimensions that we see in front of us here. First dimension is value. What is the perceived value of the product for our customers? How do customers view our product? Is it a nice to have? Is it a discretionary product? Or is it something that is as essential, as necessary to them as breathing? Second dimension is contribution. What did it take us, the product builder, the product developer, to build this product? When you think of a magical product experience, a product that makes us say wow, that magic tends to exist at the intersection of value, where a customer perceives the value of a product as very, very high, and contribution, where we put in a great deal of effort to create that magical experience. If we've created that magic, our decision on how and where we price the product, remember the two states? The first state is a price taker. The second state is a price setter. Our decision to place the product in between these two values determine how the product moves. So three dimension: price, what is the product sold for? Value, how do customers view the product, how do they value it, and contribution, effort on our part. These are three dimensions. There are other dimensions that we will discuss as we move forward with our conversation, but this gives you a sense of what we mean by dimensionality. How is dimensionality different from multi-stage? Think of a game of Scrabble. There are four moves here, right? You start off with your first move, which is the word Pathik. Every other word that you or your competition places on the board has one specific goal that you want to focus on. You want to make sure that you don't open up the board too early, and especially you don't open up the board in such a fashion that the triple letter word or the double letter word tiles are easily available to your competitor. Each move leads to that goal. Finally, the game is connected. Like a good story, a film, or a good novel, each chapter links to the chapters that follow. Consider this cube as a mainstream market for a product. Each of these faces, each of the 6 faces that we see here, represents one dimension, one variation of the product. If you're a new entrant to the market, the question that you want to ask is, where do I find unhappy customers? Where do we find unhappy customers? We find unhappy customers at intersections, at the edges, because customers and product variations at the intersection and edges tend to be less looked after. So if you were to answer this question, where do I find unhappy customers? I'm likely to find unhappy customers at the intersection and edges of mainstream market. One strategy for market entry when competing head to head against mainstream competitors is to focus on customers at the intersection, customers at the edges. And while these are all variations of the same product, but variations that are focused and targeted on a specific segment, they're also related to each other. They're also connected to each other. Like the Scrabble game, one market entry strategy is to focus on the edges. Capture the first edge, then the second, then the third, then the fourth. By the time you get to the fourth edge, you actually have a reasonable, significant share of the market, and your competition still doesn't know that you've outclassed and outfoxed them. Beyond the dimensions that we've discussed, how is this game played? The game is played across 4 separate decisions. The first decision is goals. From a pricing perspective, what is our goal? Is a goal for the customer to try a product? Is it for us to convert that customer so that they buy a product? Is it to retain them when threatened by a competitive product? What can we do to ensure that the customer stays with us? Or is it for us to harvest customers, where we don't want to work with all customers, we only want to work with a specific profile or a type of a customer? How does this translate into pricing objectives? If the objective is trial on our part, we want to set the price at a point where it's a no-brainer for the customer to try our product. In this specific instance, it's the customer, sometimes the market, that really sets the price. So while it may cost us X, if the price at which the customer may want to try the product is X by 10, then we will have to go with X by 10. In the second instance, if the goal is conversion, the market sets the price. What is the price at which this buy would become a no-brainer? The third stage, where we are threatened by a competitive entry, where we already have established position in the market, the customer sets the price. What do I have to do to retain you? What do I have to do to make sure that you don't switch to the competition? The harvesting stage, this generally happens when the product is in a mature stage of its life cycle, where there is increased competition and we have to decide which one of the customers do we want to focus on retaining and which one of the customers do we want to let go. In the harvesting stage, we, the product developers, the product builders, the product owners, set the price. From the game perspective, we have to remember the rules. Pricing is dimensional. Pricing is multi-stage. Pricing is connected. We also have to remember the end game. Who do we want to be? Who do we want to be? Do we want to be a price taker or do we want to be a price setter? Post goals, what is the next decision? The next decision is, what is a product? How do you classify a product? Is our product a generic product that has multiple substitutes in the market? Is it a mainstream product with a steady, stable demand? Is it an innovative product or is it a bleeding edge product? If you want the customer to try a generic product, the conversation is very different. You want the customer to try an innovative product, the conversation is very different. You want the customer to try a bleeding edge product that looks like, feels like, behaves like science fiction, the conversation is very different. Third component is segment. So take the example that we just spoke about earlier. You want the customer to try a bleeding edge product. We're now in a game of interlocking puzzles. If you've picked up trial and if you've picked up bleeding edge, then the only piece that fits are innovators and early adapters. If you want the customer to try a generic or mainstream product, the only customers that make sense are mainstream and followers. The final element in this game is the stage decision. Where exactly is your product? Are you just about to launch it? Are you in the mainstream conversion mode? Are you growing your market share or are you harvesting? All 4 elements, goals, product, segment, and stage, determine who you want to be and where you're heading to. If trial and conversion are the goal and the product is innovative and bleeding edge, then you're only looking at innovators and adapters, and your product is likely to be in a launch and conversion stage. Pricing model that you use here is going to be very different if you're trying to retain or harvest customer for a mainstream product, targeting mainstream and follower customers in a growth stage. Pricing model is a function of where you are on the board. That sets the context. Now let's talk about framework. Sequoia Capital came up with a fairly interesting product market fit framework that is very useful when examining pricing decision. This framework looks at three different product market fit models. The first is a hair on fire mode, a hard fact mode, and a future vision mode. Maps that to customer mindset, product category, and the challenges you must overcome to hit product market fit. Remember, this is from a PMF context, but pricing plays a fairly important role. So hair on fire mode, a product which is very much in demand, customer is dying for it, and he wants you to help him or her now. Challenge in this category is that everybody is aware of that and the category is very crowded. The challenge you must overcome is noise. In a crowded category, by definition, the market as well as the pricing model is going to be competitive. You are not going to be able to deploy a cost plus or a value model in a crowded category. A hard fact model is a model where people have accepted the status quo and have learned to live with it. So the market is stagnant, is not going anywhere. You have to break the underlying habit of your customers so that they would switch to your revolutionary product. A future vision product is a product which is as good as sci-fi. It's as good as a science fiction novel or a film or a movie. It's a product that people would say, I would believe it when I see it. So your right model, the category does not exist. You are the inventor of the category, and you must overcome disbelief in the sense that, is this really happening? Is this possible? Is this true? Simple examples. Hair on fire mode, good example is a tax return deadline. In Pakistan, in the market that I work and live in, that deadline is 30th September. In the month of September, everybody is keen on making sure that they file the return by that specific date. The market is fairly crowded. You must overcome noise as a new entrant in this specific space by making sure that people understand what your product offers compared to everybody else who's in that space. However, from a pricing perspective, the pricing is set. And who sets it? It's set by the market. You don't have a lot of choice in terms of how much you want to charge. You have to live with what the market is willing to pay. This is the hair on fire mode. The second category, the hard fact category. This is a statement that we see on a regular basis. And what is that statement? That statement is national version everywhere on the planet. This is Pakistan, this is India, this is Bangladesh, this is Sri Lanka, this is Nigeria, this is Kenya. Everybody has a version of what they've accepted as given. The market is stagnant, and what you really have to break is the habit. You have to break the habit that things will always be this way, that nothing's going to change. A future vision product is a product that says or focuses on the fact that one day we will be able to produce a AAA game in my country. This is a category that does not exist right now in my market. And if you were to come out and say that I want to build a product that focuses on building a AAA game, most people will look at you with disbelief. For a hair on fire product, you really have to be best in class, which again indicates and suggests that your biggest risk is competition, which basically means that you cannot be priced higher than the competition. You can be different, but from a pricing perspective, you'll have to be a price taker. From a hard fact perspective, you'll have a novel solution that is, let's say, 10x cheaper than the most recent solution. You have to make it worth solving, and that can only happen if you take a revolutionary approach. Again, you will have to be a price taker. So in this specific case, the model that you're looking at is price taker. In the hard fact model also, the most common scenario is going to be a price taker. The only scenario where you want to be a price setter is the future vision product, where you build a product that does not exist, focusing on a category that does not exist. What makes it possible for you to break all those expectations, because you figured out one genuine, interesting, different, new way of doing things that nobody else has figured out. The risk here obviously is that if you take the wrong path, then you're going to die. In the hair on fire category, one of the best examples is education technology, or EdTech for short. Over the last 50 years, EdTech has taken many shapes and form, sometimes on a completely, truly revolutionary basis. But the primary challenge in the EdTech category is the ease with which those advantages are replicated and how quickly the space becomes crowded. Class Clowns by Jonathan Nee, an in-depth collection of cases from the education industry, going all the way back from 1970 to the post.com bust, in the early 2000s, walks through a number of truly revolutionary technology companies that focused on the education technology space, but fell flat on their face when it came to generating returns for their investors. In the hard fact category, think of everything which has become 10x cheaper over the last 30 years, from hotel bookings to buying books online, from transferring money in the blink of an eye from one corner of the planet to another. These are all variations where a revolutionary approach, an underlying revolutionary business model, made things exceedingly cheaper for consumers, and over a period of 2 to 3 decades scaled up to a point where the technology and the business both made money for their founders, owners, and investors. In the future vision category, take the example of agentic AI. We don't have to go back 30 years in this specific instance. Just go back 2 years to December 2022. In December 2022, did any of us believe that there would be a wide range of large language models available that would help us write novels, prepare rational, well-structured counter-arguments to a logical debate, or even help write code? All of this was your right. Disbelief. I would believe it when I see its solutions. Within 3 to 6 months of the launch of the original flag bearer in this space, ChatGPT, we saw a range of competing solutions with an array of options in terms of depth, deployment, cost, speed, responsiveness, and intelligence. What was a year-right solution in December 22 is a part of our daily lives in January 2025. What about a single product categories? Can we create a well-structured argument that looks at all three instances, hair on fire, hard fact, and future vision within a specific category? Take compute, the ability to rent cloud compute across the world. Not any compute, but GPU compute. While cloud compute is old news, GPU compute has just started to flex its muscle. In the GPU compute space, we are in a hair on fire category. Everybody needs it. Everybody needs it right now. There is an enormous amount of competition in hosting, training, and inference infrastructure. And here, the winning condition is not going to be just be better. It has to be, what is it that you're doing differently than everybody else? In the same category, if we accept that GPU compute is always going to be in short supply and take that as a hard fact, a novel solution would be 10x cheaper and 10x more abundant. Is there a way to look at GPU compute, host GPU compute, or create GPU compute infrastructure in such a fashion that is 10x cheaper? That would require a revolutionary approach, an approach that doesn't just look at the hardware side, looks at the hardware side, looks at the interconnect side, and look at how we use training and inference resources. The same thing that DeepSeek pulled in December of 2024. From a future vision perspective, today, the cost of running an exaflop infrastructure runs in a couple of megawatts. Is there a future where we would be able to produce and provide exaflop compute power in less than 20 watt? This sounds like science fiction at this point in time, and it may not become real over the next 10 years, but one never knows. But what we do know for a fact is if that happens, it'll again be a revolutionary approach that would be based on hard science. Across all three approaches, GPU compute will always be a crowded market. And given the fact it's a crowded market, do you think product owners in the GPU compute space would be price setters or price takers? Hair on fire, help me now, outcompete it, be different. In that crowded space, how do you think you're going to be able to charge a premium for your services? But ultimately, you will become a price taker simply because the competition is likely to catch up with you. It's unlikely that in the GPU compute space, you'll ever be able to set the own price for your resources. In the hard fact, the 10x cheaper space, once again, it's possible that you may be able to set prices in the beginning, but your ability to defend your price setting capabilities would depend on how revolutionary your approach is and how easy is it to copy. The 20 watt exaflop infrastructure is the only instance here where you may be able to stay and defend your price setting capability depending on how far ahead you are of your competition and how long are you able to maintain and keep that distance between the two.